Today's story is one of those that starts like a dream, full of happiness and love, but takes a turn no one could have expected. It was emailed to me by someone I'll call John and his wife, Ploy. Take a moment, grab a coffee, and let's walk through their story together. Some stories don't begin with fireworks or grand plans. They start quietly, in a moment so ordinary that you almost miss it. This story begins not on a beach, or in a bar, or in a temple, but in a 7-Eleven convenience store in Thailand. It's about John, a man from Devon in the southwest of England, and Ploy, a young Thai woman whose smile changed the course of his life forever. It's a story of love, dreams, heartbreak, and the lesson that even the best plans sometimes need a plan B. John grew up in a small coastal town in Devon, surrounded by green fields, stone cottages, and the comforting rhythm of the English countryside. It was peaceful, safe, and predictable. But John was always curious. He wanted more than the usual 9-to-5 life, more than the drizzle and routine. At 25, he decided to travel to Thailand. He'd visited before, a few times in fact, a mix of holidays and, well, curiosity. Thailand, to him, was a sensory explosion. Warm nights, spicy food, friendly faces, and a pace of life that made him feel alive. Each visit left him wanting more. But it was during one particular trip that his life took an unexpected turn. It was a hot, humid evening in Chiang Mai. John stopped by a 7-Eleven for a much-needed cold drink. And that's where he met Ploy. She was 22, polite, cheerful, and quick to laugh. Her English was far from perfect, but there was a warmth in her voice that made every word seem easy. They chatted briefly. He returned the next day, and the day after that. Eventually, he asked her if she would like to grab a coffee sometime. To his surprise, she said yes. Their first few dates were simple. Walks by the lake, street food, little markets. But it was clear, very quickly, that something real was growing between them. In just a few weeks, it wasn't just a holiday romance. It was love, deep, genuine, and mutual. But time, as always, caught up. John's trip came to an end. He had to return to England. Back in Devon, life went on. But something was missing. He'd left part of himself behind. John and Ploy stayed in touch constantly. Phone calls, messages, letters. The usual. They talked about everything. Their dreams, their plans, their next meeting. A few months later, John returned to Thailand. And then again. And again. Each time, their bond grew stronger. Every goodbye became harder. Finally, after one long phone call filled with laughter and tears, they both knew what had to happen. John was going to move to Thailand. For good. By now, John had saved enough money to live for a few years without any worries. He sold what he didn't need, packed 2 suitcases, and flew to Thailand to start a new chapter in his life. John and Ploy got married in a small ceremony, surrounded by family and friends. It wasn't lavish, but it was full of love. With his savings, John bought a modest 2-bedroom townhouse just outside Nam Nao town in Phetchabun, which was where Ploy's family lived. A beautiful, peaceful part of Thailand, surrounded by mountains and open countryside. On a tiny patch of land opposite the house, he built a small convenience store. Nothing fancy, but enough to bring in a steady income. Ploy helped run it, and together they built a comfortable, simple life. They were never rich, but they had what mattered: love, laughter, and a sense of peace. Her parents were well off, so they never struggled, and they even invested into the shop. Life was good. Years passed. Seasons came and went. John learnt some Thai, made friends in the community, and became part of the local fabric. He wasn't just a foreigner anymore. He was family. They tried for a baby, something they had both dreamed about deeply. When it didn't happen naturally, they turned to IVF. But despite their hopes and prayers, it wasn't meant to be. It was heartbreaking, but they accepted it. They found happiness in each other and poured their energy into their little business, their home, and their life together. By their 40s, they had settled into a lovely rhythm. Every morning started with a coffee on the porch. Every evening ended with laughter and dinner at their small kitchen table. And then fate gave them another opportunity. When John's grandmother in England passed away, he inherited £20,000. It wasn't a fortune, but enough to make a difference. After talking it over with Ploy, they decided to invest in something meaningful. A second shop, about a kilometre away from where they lived. It would be run by Ploy's younger brother, who was looking for work. It was a win-win. Family helping family, and the business expanding. They actually doubled their earnings overnight. For a while, everything went perfectly. 2 shops running smoothly, family close by, and love stronger than ever. It seemed like the dream they had built together was unshakable. But, as life often reminds us, even the best dreams can change in an instant. It began with pain in Ploy's pelvis, something she brushed off at first as tiredness or stress. Then came unusual bleeding. John convinced her to visit the hospital. What followed were weeks of tests, scans, and waiting rooms filled with uncertainty. And then the diagnosis. Cervical cancer, stage 3. The doctor's words hit like a hammer. Treatment was possible, but the survival rate was only around 30 to 35%. John tried to stay strong, for her, for himself, but deep down, he was terrified. They fought it together, hospital trips, chemo sessions, sleepless nights. 3 long years of hope and heartache. But eventually, Ploy's body couldn't take any more. She passed away peacefully, surrounded by family, and by John, holding her hand until the very end. Losing her broke John in ways he couldn't describe. For years, she had been his world, his reason for being there, his anchor, his home. After the funeral, Ploy's parents took care of him as if he were their own son. They made sure he ate, rested, and, most of all, wasn't alone. He was grateful for their kindness, but as the weeks passed, he began to feel something strange. The house, once filled with laughter, now felt hollow. The shop kept running, but the joy was gone. He was grateful for their kindness, but deep down, he felt lost. One evening, an old friend named Tony came to visit. They sat at the front of the shop, drinking beers, talking about everything and nothing. Eventually, the topic of visas came up. Tony asked, "So, what kind of visa are you on now?" John replied casually, "Still on the marriage visa. It renews every year." Tony paused. "Wait, John, you can't renew a marriage visa if your wife has passed away." John froze. He hadn't even thought of that. The very next morning, he rushed to the immigration office, and, sure enough, Tony was right. Once his current visa expired, his non-O visa based on marriage, he would have to leave Thailand. The only other option was a retirement visa, but that required him to be 50 years old or more. He was only 47. That meant he had just 3 months left in Thailand. That was all that was left of his visa before it expired. He asked the officers about his house and the shop. They told him to speak to a lawyer. He found a good English-speaking lawyer in Phetchabun, who explained that he had 1 year to sell the property since, as a foreigner, he couldn't keep it in his name without his Thai wife. But John didn't really want to sell. He wanted the house, the shop, their life to stay in the family. So he spoke to Ploy's parents. They actually made him a very fair offer. It wasn't quite market value, but John didn't care. It meant that Ploy's brother could keep running the business and her family could keep what they'd built together. Once the paperwork was signed, John felt both relief and heartbreak. He spent a few weeks in Chiang Mai, where he first met Ploy, and then Chonburi, trying to clear his head, sitting by the beach, drinking a cold beer, watching the sunsets that Ploy had always loved. And then his time was up. He booked a flight back to England. After more than 2 decades in Thailand, John landed back in Devon, back where it all began. His parents welcomed him with open arms, but he could see the concern in their eyes. He was no longer the same man who'd left in his 20s, full of dreams and adventure. He'd lived a lifetime abroad, loved, lost, and started over. Now, he was nearly 50, sleeping in the same room he'd left behind 20 years earlier. He eventually found work as a barman at a local pub, a job that kept him busy and surrounded by people. He smiled, joked, and poured pints. But behind the smile, part of him was still in Thailand. He often thought of Ploy, her laugh, her kindness, the life they'd built, and the country that had given him everything and taken everything away. John doesn't regret his choices. He says he was lucky. Lucky to have experienced love so pure, even if it didn't last forever. But if he could offer one piece of advice to others dreaming of building a life abroad, it would be this: always have a plan B. Life can change in an instant. Laws, visas, health, fate. And no matter how strong your love or how stable your life seems, it's always wise to be prepared. Because as John learnt, sometimes paradise can disappear overnight. John still keeps a photo of Ploy on his bedside table. Her smile as bright as it was that day in 7-Eleven. He says some mornings he wakes up and for a split second forgets she's gone. And in that split second, he's back in Thailand. The sun's rising over the mountains, the shop shutters are rolling up, and Ploy is there, handing him his morning coffee. Then the reality returns. But so does gratitude for the years they shared, for the lessons they learned, and for the love that still lingers even now.